So where do you stand? Team freedom, team lockdown, team face mask? Folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. And yes, I'd like to talk about this topic. In my channel, I don't shy away from unpopular or controversial topics. And many channels will refuse completely to talk about politics. I think that we should. I think that it's important for survival and preparedness. It is something that will dictate quite strongly our strategy. It's something that's going to be influencing our way of life, our survival. So it's something we need to address. So if you had told me, like last year, that there would be a deadly virus spreading all over the world, a global pandemic killing thousands, tens of thousands, or eventually hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, or more, and you would have people that even refuse to believe such a thing even exists, or even if there's hundreds of thousands of dead people, assume it's a big deal and just say, okay, people die every day anyway, so it doesn't matter. If you had told me that, I would have told you you're completely nuts. That's impossible. That's not rational human behavior. Yet here we are. So answering the question, where do I stand? I stand in all three and in none. And my idea with this video is probably to try to help you out how to figure this, and decide what type of strategy you approach yourself as time goes on and circumstances become more clear here and there. What strategy should you be applying? So am I a team lockdown? Yes, sure, absolutely. I think that at a certain point it was a wise idea. I've heard so many nonsense these last few months. It just lowers your IQ just listening to how stupid people can be. I've heard even that quarantines were not a thing, that was just invented right now, and these things didn't happen and were never tested and it had never been done before. That's crazy talk. Quarantines are as old as mankind. Whenever someone was sick, one of the things they did was either isolate that person, and if not, if you had the opportunity of isolate everyone so as to not catch the disease, that's something that humans figured out pretty early on. I mean, we've gone through the Middle Ages with this sort of thing where everyone would try to stay home and avoid getting sick, contacting one another. This is something that people pretty soon realized that, even though they couldn't possibly explain what it was, they realized that sick person would infect others. I mean, the word quarantine basically comes from that, from you have a person that don't know if they may be sick or not, so you put them for 40 days. Quarantine basically meaning like 40 days of isolation, and if that person is not showing any symptoms, okay, that person doesn't have this witchcraft thing or whatever it is that kills others. That's how this is started, and it's as old as mankind itself, basically. So pretending that lockdowns are this crazy thing from the left, trying to ruin the economy so as to screw Trump, that just doesn't make any sense. Are they maybe some people cheering for a crappy economy so as to screw Trump? Absolutely. So you have to understand, that's what I mean by I'm in all of those, in all three camps and in none, because there are little things that you can borrow or you can agree with at certain points or certain aspects. So do I believe that at certain points you do need a quarantine? Yes, absolutely. Is it tough? Of course it is. Is it something sustainable in time? Of course not. You cannot have people locked in their homes for the rest of their lives or for years at a time. The impact you have on the economy is brutal. So it is this, and this is something actually that I heard Trump mention himself, specifically regarding American politics. But I'm more of a person that watches what's happening in different countries. I can tell you that watching the news in Europe as well, in South America, is something that is pretty close to me, so I keep track of that as well. Pretty much every president in every country is somewhat struggling with the same thing of how much do we open up and how much do we risk of having those numbers go through the roof and maybe end up again with a scenario where people are dying without being even properly treated because you just the dam just burst and you just don't have the resources to deal with everyone. So that is kind of a tricky business. At the same time, when you ruin the economy, the impact in terms of poverty, in terms of deaths even further down the road may be as bad or worse than if... So this exact point is like working a clutch on a manual car. You have to find that sweet spot where you kind of do the less possible damage. No one is going to be getting it perfect. Some countries will get closer to that if they do proper analysis, but it's still a lose-lose situation eventually. It just sucks. What about team freedom? Am I team freedom? Absolutely, yes. If there's something I feel very strongly about is personal liberties, individual rights, freedom, yes, that's maybe the most important thing for me. Does that mean that I don't believe there's even a virus killing people? Oh, of course not. That's just stupid. In fact, I distrust naturally everything that I'm getting from the media, mainstream or otherwise. I kind of laugh when I see people that don't believe in the mainstream media, but they hear some anonymous weirdo on Facebook and that guy they choose to believe. You have to be very cautious with everything, mainstream media or not. You know, if there's some network or some channel that has a little bit more of a reputation worth losing, and they kind of are a little bit more careful about that, I give them a little bit more slack. But basically, I distrust everything. So when this was first getting started, and I was talking about this in my channel in January, you can go check it out. I'm not making anything up. We were talking about this with David Jones. I didn't believe the Chinese when they were saying that this was not transmittable from human to human. They were saying just that. I remember it vividly. I didn't believe them. You know, when the World Health Organization was saying the same thing, I didn't agree. I don't believe them either. And when they're saying that you shouldn't be using a face mask or a respirator because it's doing you no good, it doesn't work, or it's even worse than not wearing it, I certainly, absolutely did not believe that either. So, am I team face mask? I'm more of a team respirator, which is what survivalists should have in their supplies. If you're a survivalist, you should have a face mask and, you know, several face masks and respirators. That's something that we've known for years now. Now, it's amazing though how people become blinded by politics. All of a sudden, they have many folks have this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I identify with, you know, very typically survivalist preppers will be a little bit more conservative, usually what you would define as, you know, right-leaning politics. All of a sudden, they find themselves in this position of, okay, I know I have to wear a mask because I've been a survivalist for many years, and I know that when there's a deadly pandemic, you know, you can argue that the number exactly how deadly it is, if it's 1, 2, 3, 5, or 0.5%, doesn't matter, but it is out there, it does exist. Should you be wearing the equipment, the gear, the personal protection equipment that you know you were supposed to be wearing, or should you take your political stance and not wear anything because everyone that agrees with that and is on that little group should, you know, resonate in the same echo chamber? You're refusing your logic if you go with that. It just makes no sense. I was watching on YouTube these crowds of people, you know, crowds of people one next to the other not wearing anything at all. That just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think you can believe in opening up eventually the economy, or already doing it in some places where the numbers, they kind of give you that idea that it's a possibility to do that with somewhat reasonable risks or casualties. You know, yes, that's also a fact. You have to admit that there's going to be dead people, but you're still going to open up the economy because it is the right thing to do with those numbers. That doesn't mean you're going to be going to a massive rally with thousands of people and not protect yourself. That's just doesn't make any sense at all. So you have to take all of these things into account when it's amazing how, if something like this had happened in any other way, let's suppose someone had planted a dirty bomb and killed 1,000 people in, you know, in the middle of New York City. How people would have reacted to that? Now, the Chinese government achieved pretty much a lot worse than that through other channels, and people don't even want to believe it, and it's not that big a deal. Imagine with any other terrorist attack or any other attack on your nation, if you had gone, okay, yeah, people die every day. What's 10,000 dead people? Not a big deal. Yet that's what's happening. That's what a lot of people are going for. So there's lots of things we still just don't know. I was just reading about a Australian doctor. I think it's an epidemiologist, one of these guys that work with pandemics. He was saying that the virus specifically, there's a very strong chance that it was actually lab created, and it's not the first time I hear that. So maybe, if anything, we have to learn how to tell between facts and opinions. One of those facts is that the Chinese government knew about this. It's another fact that the Chinese government, along with the World Health Organization, hid information and were not being honest about what was happening. That's also a fact at this point. I don't think, yes, there's crazy people that argue absolutely everything, but most somewhat sane, not crazy people will admit that's a fact. The World Health Organization, along with the Chinese government, were not open and honest about what was happening. Another fact is the Chinese government, man-made or lab-created or bad theory or whatever, they did lock their infected city while at the same time allowing flights from that same city to the rest of the world. That is basically weaponizing your pandemic. That's weaponizing a virus that no matter how it was created, you're making sure it's affecting the rest of the world while at the same time making sure it's not spreading on your own home. That needs to have some repercussions, some consequences, because it is an attack on pretty much every other country that you allow to be infected. So in terms of we talked about lockdowns. Yes, at a certain point you definitely needed those. You probably still need it, and you may well end up needing them again later on. There's a good chance there's going to be a big second wave. If that happens, and at some point you have to go with another lockdown, as bad as it is the numbers. Once you crunch those numbers, if they're telling you that the consequences from not going into a lockdown would be worse than not doing so, then you'll do it again. In terms of team freedom, yes, there's been some governments around the world. Again, it's something that I make sure I look into, not only what's happening in the United States but other countries in Europe and in Latin America. It's something, because I'm from Argentina, so that's something I keep track of. In general, the South American situation, there's governments that take advantage of this so as to test waters. Anything a little bit more authoritarian is something you will abuse this situation. Look at what happened in Canada with this Trudeau guy, how he took advantage of the pandemic so as to go with a weapons ban. A gun ban in the middle of the pandemic when everyone was locked down and could not make their voices heard. You couldn't protest on the street. You couldn't have a rally supporting your rights. And he took advantage of that. A great example of how authoritarian leaders and governments and officials take advantage of this. Pretty much in every country you have officials testing waters. Compliance. How well do people take unpopular restrictions and rules and orders? Do people obey when ordered to do stuff? So yes, that's also happening as well. We're not going to be saying otherwise. And am I team face mask? I'm more of a team respirator, which is what I use, which is what you should have if you are a survivalist as well. When they were saying don't use it, I was using mine. I was definitely using mine, and I'll continue to use mine until I feel we are in a position where it is okay to be without it. At this point, it's definitely not. At this point, in many parts of the world, you're pretty much it's mandatory the use of these crappy cotton masks that don't do anything other than just make you comply with the order. So we're going back to that part of these three teams. But I'd rather use something that actually protects me, which is a proper gas mask. You know, that's what works. That's what's going to be stopping me from inhaling droplets or little drops with the virus. A cotton mask, other than making me comply with a given order, is really not protecting me much. It is better than nothing. We've done videos about this, yes, but I don't go with better than nothing. I go with something that works. That's the way I see it. Okay, guys. So I'm in all teams, adding none. I'm my own person, and I make my own decisions, and I don't let irrational thoughts dictate my strategies when it comes to survival. I make rational decisions based on the information I have at hand as best as I can. So should you guys. I'm going to be leaving you guys now. Remember, street survival skills. If you didn't buy the book, get it, because I was just getting a message from someone on Facebook. They got the Modern Survival Manual, loved it, got street survival skills, and loved it as well. So these two available in Amazon, following the link below. We're going to be talking more about this sort of stuff because this is what's coming. The economic crunch, the economic crisis that's going to be happening pretty much everywhere, no matter where you are. It is going to be hitting you. They're trying to make everything look as if everything's fine with the stock market and such. The consequences of the record unemployment, will be tough. It's not going to be easy. The impact on oil prices, airlines, tourism, that's all going to be having a very strong impact, and we better be ready for that. See you on the next video. Have an awesome day.